Great. I want to welcome the faculty and staff of AUB who found the time to come out to meet and greet our new president, President-elect Dr. Fadlo Khuri. Fadlo was the selection of the search committee, the presidential search committee, as you all know by now. We made that decision a while ago and finally got it up to the full board 2 weeks ago exactly, and the full board voted decisively and with enormous positive feeling about Dr. Khoury as our next president, and he will begin September 1st. But he's already begun to hit the ground and meet with people and get to know some of the issues and activities going on, and he'll be doing a lot of listening tours between now and then, and once he officially starts, you can be sure of it. I just want to do 3, maybe 4 things briefly. One, I want to acknowledge Dr. Lamia Tanous Khoury, who is with us today. She came out with Fadlo. She is Fadlo's wife. Many of you know Lamia and Fadlo. Many of you don't, I realize. But they come from long AUB lineage on both sides. Both of their parents, in fact, both of Fadlo's parents and Lamia's father were professors on this faculty. And they grew up in and around this campus, which is part of lineage, part of tradition. But I want to assure you that while we were very interested in this search, in finding a president who knows and understands the region and culture and has some familiarity possibly with the university, that wasn't the primary criterion for hiring Fadlo Khoury. It was an important one, but it wasn't the principal one. But I'll come back to that. I also want to mention several trustees who are here with us today who have flown in. In one case, for Jabber, of course, lives here. Ali Ghandour is here, also here. Riyad Kamal came in from Dubai, probably, just guessing. He's with us. Fadi Ghandour, I saw earlier, is with us as well. Am I missing anyone? No, I think those are the ones who were able to join us. These trustees, of course, were directly involved in the decision-making process that got us to today. I also want to mention, I can't see her, a remarkable faculty member who served on this committee, Dr. Lara Halawi, professor of chemistry, also the associate dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. Let me just say, you know, we got it right when we asked her to serve on this committee. She was our ballast, in many ways our most intelligent interlocutor, giving us tremendous insights into candidates and into the campus. And we're just, Lara, really grateful to you, really. So let me just say a few words beyond that about the process. We had maybe 150 applicants and nominees for this position. We were able to reduce that quite quickly to something around 60 or 65 people who looked reasonably serious to us. We got that down pretty quickly to something like 27 or 28 who had real promise, we thought. We eventually interviewed rigorously 8 candidates, brought 3 back, 3, and I will say this, 3 outstanding finalists. Any one of them could have been president of this university. I want to be very clear about that. But in the end, this committee, in its wisdom, chose this gentleman, okay? And he is our next president, and we hope he'll be next president for the next 5 or 10 years or beyond. So that's in a nutshell how the search kind of progressed. Let me say a few words about him. I mentioned Fadlo's family. Most importantly, he grew up, as I said, around here, went to IC, spent a year, so he's counted as an alumnus of AUB. By the way, AUB calculates alumni. I'm one too, so I'm grateful. You could do 1 year here and you count. Thank you, faculty, for voting us in. But we don't have degrees. And Fadlo then transferred to Yale, where he got his undergraduate degree, then went to Columbia Physicians and Surgeons, and then came up to Boston for, internship, residency, that kind of thing. You in the medical world will know what I'm talking about. And then ended up at MD Anderson eventually in Houston, where he was a real success, and then transferred over to Emory University, to the medical school, where he really built up the department of hematology and oncology almost from scratch. And enormous kudos, and that mattered a lot to us in our thinking about him. He had taken, some dust and turned it into, a piece of really excellent furniture, and on the very high end at that institution and among the leading cancer departments in the country. And it matters. Now, I say that because, of course, eventually we brought him to AUB. He's also been a trustee briefly. He's an elected alumni representative from the YAUB on the Board of Trustees, so he's gotten some sense and appreciation of what the board does, at least the last 2 or 3 meetings. But he's not been a long-term trustee. He will remain a trustee as president, of course. So that's just a little about his career. There's much more, and you've had a chance to read about it on the AUB presidential website and elsewhere in the media. I'm trying to think, is there really anything else I need to say about him? I don't think so. I'm just going to pass this microphone over to you, Fadlo, and it's your show, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out. I know you're all busy, and I'm not into giving long speeches, so I'll keep it brief. I want to thank Philip and the board for making me the shortest serving member of the Board of Trustees. It certainly wasn't my goal. And I am now on record, by the time I leave Emory to come here in late August, I will be the shortest serving research dean in the history of Emory University School of Medicine. Not distinctions that one aspires to. Now is not the time to talk about why, but really what is possible. And I think this is a great university that does not need a tear down and rebuild audience expert to start with. That was a question I was asked by the students. We know you can tear things down and build them from scratch. And I said, no, I hope that's not my only skill. We have some spectacular people. Many of you know me because Mo Sayegh and I have worked very closely together for the last 5 years, I guess, as chair of his IAC, and then some of you know me for much longer than that. I'm happy to say that this is a group that any university could be proud of, but that the hard work that I'm going to thank you for is not the work that you've done, but the work that you will do. There's some overarching principles I think we need to agree on that certainly are near and dear to my heart and central to my vision for this university, which is that while we have more than doubled financial aid in the last 5 to 7 years, probably far more exceptional students deserve an AUB education than we can currently afford to take in. And that is not going to be easy. AUB has transformed the lives of everyone in this room, and I think it behooves us to look at methods and work with the Board of Trustees who've been extraordinarily generous but can't essentially bankroll the university on their own, although they've tried, to really realize the dream of young people all across this country and really this region, because this is not Lebanon's university only. This is the world's university, and we have to take the view that this can be one of the great universities. I know that in some programs, for example, in the medical school, you are able to take everyone who qualifies, but I want us, even if we don't get there, to move towards being able to help everyone who deserves to have an AUB education to consider it irrespective of need. Second is scholarship. I'm a researcher and a physician at heart. We have many outstanding scholars here, but not nearly the resources for that scholarship to be consistently exceptional. We do great work here, but we need more resources, and getting those resources is not just a question of having generous donors. It's about having a dialogue with the faculty, with the deans, with the VPs and the executive leadership and the board about what are the areas that we can be exceptional in It's really all about service and impact. And the third thing is service. And this is where I want to challenge myself and to challenge all of us in this room. This is a truly great university, but it doesn't start and stop with research and with education. Part of it is service. We're in a part of the world that's in perennial turmoil. I got a very elegant email this morning, thanks to Philip, from my oldest friend in the world, Hussein Ibish, who he and I used to share time on the Oval before we could walk. And one of the things we all need to realize, that you need to realize and I need to realize, is that we're role models here, and we're role models for a reason, but we need to be participatory role models. There are many, many parts of this country, this region, and this world that would be better if we could participate in service, whether that's taking in an underprivileged individual, working at institutions that help the unfortunate, or helping the local, national, and international schools deliver more of what we've been privileged to receive. So those are the three guiding principles for me. I will work every day to help get more resources, more scholarships, more transparency, and more dialogue. My door will be open, and we will talk and make decisions. But I have no problems making decisions when there isn't a consensus. Let's face it, the principal preference of any leader is to build and obtain consensus. That is always the best method forward. But even decisions made without consensus need to be made, but need to be made fully informed with a dialogue with the faculty. In my 13 years at Emory, I've been occasionally accused of being too much of a faculty chair, too much of a faculty director, too much of a faculty dean. I will moderate those tendencies, but this is my easiest, and I know you're not going to be all that easy. This is my easiest group because my understanding and my belief is that all of us here know that the students, the trustees, the faculty, the alumni, the staff, and the region are all important stakeholders for AUB and all deserve our very best. So I'm looking forward to working with you to empower the best and the brightest to come here, to learn here, to stay here, and to help change things for the better. I'll be happy to take any questions, or we can go straight to the reception, but with this crowd, I think that's unlikely.
I'll field the questions, and Fadlo will goodness answer them. If you have any, don't be shy. Okay, all this way for this. You're hungry.
Yes.
It's not a question, really, but an expression of enormous gratitude for accepting this job. And brief as your speech was, it captured most of the very important priorities at this point, particularly increasing scholarships for students. We've increased that, but not enough. So I was very, very relieved to see this is one of your priorities. We don't want to become the university of the rich. We want to be an elite university, but in another sense. I'm also very happy to see that you identified yourself as a faculty member. And I know you will not necessarily go along with the faculty, but this is a very, very important condition for effectiveness, and I am very, very optimistic based on what you just said, and wish you good luck, sir.
Thank you. I should be careful of the assumption. My future chair of medicine, my future dean first have to validate my being worthy to be a faculty member. So I'm a prospective faculty member for now, until Fuad and Mo get me through the board of deans, many of whom are sitting here, so I have to be careful what I say. questions and not softballs. Yes?
Please. Why don't you stand up if you don't mind and just tell us who you are? So,
I'm Thomas Kim. I'm chair of Fine Arts and Art History. Thank you. Thank you very much. You talked about having an open door and listening, but you also talked about the ability to be very decisive in your actions. I'm wondering, and I think all of us know that there are many major issues that need to be tackled right away, but I also think that many of us, if not all of us, are worried about too much change right away. How are you going to balance those two issues?
So thank you. I'm not going to insult any of you by saying that was a great question, because I expect great questions. There was a great editorial in 2000 by Maureen Dowd, which basically predicted George W. Bush would win the election over Al Gore because, as she said, and I'm paraphrasing, people like change from time to time and not from moment to moment. And that's been a principle I've tried to live my whole life. If you take everything and break it and put it back together, that may be fun for a puzzle, but not for an institution. I'm very good at, I think, at listening, and I'm at my heart a scientist and a physician. There are a great deal of data that I need to gather before making decisions. I did characterize and do characterize myself as decisive, and I do think that probably factored into why the board asked me to serve. My goal is to never fix something that isn't broken, that's doing well, but only the things that could do even better to push people and push parts of the institution to do even better, but to fairly resource them or judge them by what they are truly capable of. That means holding you to the highest bar possible, because I think it was Michelangelo himself who said, since you're from the fine arts, that the greatest failure is not reaching too far or too high and failing, but reaching too low and succeeding. And I think you're all capable of succeeding to a tremendous degree, more perhaps than even you or I realize. But that success needs to be studied. And since we are a great private university, but not one without infinite resources, we cannot be all things to all people. So we will have to learn what we're really great at and grow that in those areas. And we'll have to also learn the essential areas that we need to improve and help those to improve.
please, yes. Would someone get more of the mic? Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Nora Bustani. I teach journalism in the Media Studies department, or whatever it is called these days. You have a tremendous scientific background, and I heard from the other room you emphasize the need for research and resources for research, which is all good and well for any university. I am in the business, as are some of my colleagues, in preparing people who join AUB for life outside of AUB. I'm preparing them to face the truth, develop skills, and help their country and their region look at themselves critically, constructively, and be honest and transparent about how they do that. How far can you push this university, my department, in going down that route? You know, many of our students end up working as journalists or in NGOs, and we need how-to courses more than courses that entertain analysis and research and number crunching. Will you go down that route with us? I think it's this region's major challenge, and I think it's going to be your challenge. How are you going to address that?
So I think one of the points of emphasis with the students that I didn't re-emphasize, because I know in this institution everyone talks to everyone, is the importance of a transformative liberal education and a period of safe and free enlightenment so they could go on to achieve more than hopefully all of us in this room will achieve. If the next generation of students is less accomplished than we are, then we will all have failed. And by accomplishment, I'm not simply speaking about research. What I'm talking about is impact. Cultural impact, social impact, impact in research and knowledge, economic impact, and yes, political impact. You are all role models. We are all role models. There is no escape from that. And so are our students. This, as I told them this morning, is the last really safe place they have to grow, to explore, to take risks that in other aspects of life are not safe or not wise, but to start to become the people they eventually must be. And I'm a true and outspoken believer in the importance of a safe, progressive, and yes, enlightened liberal education. So you're asking me how far down that path you will go. I have started to show you how far down that path I will go. I've given up my lab, reduced my practice, and taken a little pay cut. I will challenge you back to see if you will go with me as far as I'm willing to go.
Paul Ati, computer science. Rather than tear things down and build them up, what we need is the time and the resources to conduct bold experiments. In teaching high-risk research, we don't have that now. I don't have that. Okay, there are lots of things I would like to do in my courses with the draft textbook I've been writing on and off, and various other experiments, and I can't do it. And I feel forced to fall back on the standard preparations because of lack of time and because I have to coordinate with other faculty teaching other sections of the same course. And I find this frustrating, I find it binding, and I find it unrewarding. And we need resources to do these bold experiments in teaching and also in research, but primarily in teaching. I think we're getting a little too hidebound because of the high teaching load and because we teach multi-section courses. And I see that as a real problem.
I agree that that's my problem, and I'll embrace it fully. I do want to be always candid with the faculty and the staff and the students as to what I believe and what I think the priorities are. So there's a German expression that I'll translate poorly, which is that he who cannot be what he wants to be must learn to want to be what he can be. There are people who are extraordinary researchers, but not as gifted teachers, and others who are extraordinary teachers for whom research is a part-time, must-do profession. And some do both extraordinarily well, including many people here on faculty. The academy started to impart knowledge and to exchange knowledge. But what do we really know about how we educate people in the different professions? I would argue we know much less than what we need to know. I think, like other great universities, we will have to move forward in a way that recognizes all of our exceptional folks, the teachers, the scholars, the healers, the mediators, and the leaders. There's a classic pitfall in academia, which is that people who are exceptional at one of those, be it teaching or administration or patient care or research, you name it, are pigeonholed to fulfill the Peter principle of getting in above their head. I'd like to learn more about how we teach and whether it's effective. How much of teaching needs to be classroom? You've seen the great experiments that are being carried out on the West Coast with remote learning, and you've seen them fail so far. That doesn't mean they'll fail in the long run. Betting on their failure would be like people betting that IBM was never going to take off. But I do think we need the data to know what we do and how can we do it better.
Thank you. There's someone in the back and someone here. Well, we'll start here, I guess, and then in the far back. You'll be next.
Hi, I'm Soah Maidan, Office of Advancement Services. Now that you're going to be doing a lot of recruiting for your team, to build your team, for people directly reporting to you, how are you going to address gender equality and hiring females equally as males? Thank you.
So that's the one common question so far I've gotten between the students and you all, and that indicates that there's a challenge here for gender equality. Let me start by saying what I believe, and I think my track record speaks for it. I don't believe in differentiating based on race, creed, national origin, sect, gender, sexual preference, or what color tie or pants or dress you put on in the morning. I really am pragmatic enough that I don't care, but I'm deeply troubled by the continuing challenge of gender equity, and not just here, but in academic institutions worldwide. So I will do everything in my power to promote the development of not just academic success, but leadership success for women at this university and minorities and others. But I think as they say, to paraphrase one of the least, how am I going to say this, at least moderately controversial figures in American public life today, Hillary Clinton, it does take a village. And the village has many constituencies. And people have to volunteer, whether for the executive team that will build and hopefully be able to finalize and announce in the next few months, or positions as deans of the schools eventually. All of us grow old. You know, Dr. Sayegh and I have picked a nice retirement home next to each other somewhere down here for about 30 years from now when you get rid of us. And our wives are sick of us. But my point is people have to volunteer. I want you to step forward. I want you to come and engage me in an honest and open dialogue saying, you know, this is good, but it's not good enough. And I'm going to pick on someone unfairly. In my view, Huda Zrei is the greatest female leader in the history of this university. We need many more Huda Zreis. And maybe when we're in that old folks' home, there'll be a university president who's a woman and a minority. That'd be great.
Yes, back there, please. Thank you so much.
Sari Hanafi, the chair of the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Media Study. There is a many evidence that AUB, it's a bubble. It's an extraterritorial space, very badly connected to Lebanese society, Lebanese industry, Lebanese economy, and Arab at large. So while Lebanese university produce a scholar who publish locally and perish globally, here at AUB we publish those who publish globally and perish locally. So, so the issue, how would you envisage to bridge between these two profiles?
So you're talking about service locally, globally, nationally, and protecting some of our best and brightest faculty members, I'm assuming, from criteria that don't fit them. Is that basically the bottom line? So I'm not someone who's wedded to the Science Citation Index or any of these fairly useful but far from universal criteria for scholarship. Someone who publishes meaningful work in Arabic that's impactful, or French, or any other language for that matter, I really don't care, is a scholar. Someone who has a major impact locally and regionally is a scholar. We need to grow in our capacity to appreciate scholarship and to judge it. That's not an easy thing to do. But nonetheless, it's something that has to be done. We need to understand impact. Impact is someone, and I've gotten beaten over the head over this because I said it at a trustees meeting and it somehow leaked to the world, that I believe people here who are professors should be at or near the in the top 5% in their area in the world. That doesn't mean that in the broad area, but if you're making a tremendous impact in your field and you are advancing the field of knowledge, I'm not worried about how often your science citation index is being put on Google Scholar. And I'm going to give you an example from my own undergraduate time, not here, but my first year at Yale. There was a faculty member called Sidney Altman. Only the biologists in the audience here would ever have heard of him. But when I went to Yale College, he had done work that no one else could replicate. And I think everyone in this room knows what happens to a scholar whose work can't be replicated. So he was cast into the outer darkness. He was anathema. He had to teach us ordinary undergraduates 300 to 500 at a time who wanted to go into medicine. But something interesting happened to Sid. A Japanese group replicated his work. And then he went from pariah to professor, chair of biology, dean of Yale College, and Nobel laureate in 8 years. So what does that mean? What that means is that the crux of what everyone in this room, Philip and all of us understand, is the goal of the academy. It's to protect free thought and the discovery and development of new knowledge, no matter how controversial, how difficult to validate, how offbeat and non-conventional. That is the purpose of research in the academy. It's not the purpose of teaching. I would argue that if Sid were teaching whole colleges about the enzymatic function of RNA in 1981, there isn't enough caffeine in the world to have followed some of his theories at the time. But that's what your job and my job is to do. It's to challenge conventional wisdom and to be secure that when you challenge it as a faculty member at this great university, that the administration has your back, that as long as you're doing things well and thoughtfully and ethically, that we understand that the lifeblood of a great university, a great research and teaching university, is its faculty.
So I have Richard down here, and then I guess you'll be next, Richard. Sorry.
Hi, Angela Harutunian. I'm from Fine Arts and Art History. In the humanities, we're facing, and also in arts, we're facing an unequal distribution of resources compared to other programs. And I guess it's not a phenomenon typical just to AUB. It's globally more practically oriented disciplines, of course, have more funding, resources, and so on. I'm wondering, how do you conceive of the role of humanities structurally within the university at large, but also in relation to other more specialized programs? Thank you.
Okay. So, you know, my first thought was to bulldoze the whole university and change it into a science park, but then I thought better of it. So I'm a true believer that the humanities are transformative to young people and to senior people. But I think we've only got half of the equation. I got Philip to promise me that once I'm done with this tour of duty, he will sponsor me while I do a PhD in history, which has long been my goal. And so I don't say this jokingly. You need to understand that you are in a society of lifelong learners. And that learning does not end when you get your bachelor's or master's or PhD, or even when you finish your term as a professor and a leader. The humanities are essential to that. Can you think of any great university in the world that's not a technical institute that doesn't have the humanities at the core of its, not just its educational approach, but of its mission? For God's sake, even MIT has a great humanities department, okay? So I think I'm struggling to answer your question here. You are part of the heart of the university. And that heart is clearly not getting out broadly enough. The students are excited about it, but let me put the pressure back on the faculty. Are you challenging the students, and not with grades? Are you challenging them with the latest and most formative ways to teach them? I don't know, you may well be. I know I wasn't. The first time I taught a medical school class, I think I ranked in the bottom 10th percentile. I kept my evaluation in my desk for 10 years. At any point, if my humility was lagging and my wife didn't take care of my humility, which she takes great pride in making sure I stay humble, that letter or a failed grant did the trick. It's your duty, it's our duty to imbue these young people with an understanding of the human condition. What's the substitute for humanities? There is nothing better. You're giving me so far relatively non-controversial questions, and I'm troubled because I don't think that was the job that I signed up for. Okay? Okay. But I appreciate the graciousness.
Richard Brow, Advancement. Could you speak specifically about institutional values that you value most from your previous experience, but also those that you would like to embed here at AUB?
So I was warned when I came here by Emory's president not to keep beating people over the head with how we did things at Emory. And I don't think you have to worry. I'm not coming here to proselytize and convert you. But if you ask me what are the things I valued most about being at Emory, which is not a uniquely American quality, but it's a quality of some of the universities, perhaps in the South and the Southeast. It's the degree of collegiality, which then lowers the activation energy to ask the really tough questions. As long as people are polite and collegial and give each other the benefit of the doubt, you can ask the toughest questions, including, you know, I like your data, I don't believe a word of it. That's easier said than when you're screaming at someone else or throwing something at them. So I loved the fact that Emory, as part of the American South, has this tremendous aura of collegiality, which I know AUB has. And also, what I love about AUB, and why I've snuck in on lectures over the years, including when I was small enough and ambiguous enough for him not to notice Dr. Dajani's never boring classes. Long time ago, before Nabil could recognize me. But what I'm saying is that we can learn from things that others do better than us as they can from things that we do better than them. That is what I loved about Emory. I loved the collegiality, the building of teams, the sharing of responsibility, and yes, of accountability and of credit. That's what I really enjoyed there.
Great. So we have this gentleman just behind Richard, and then I have Mad, and then I have this gentleman. No, there's another one back there. We'll try to keep, we'll come back to it. There's back someone who raised his hand.
Hello, my name is Shadi Saleh from the Faculty of Health Sciences. I want to thank you both for giving us the opportunity to get to know our president-elect and appreciate your frankness and openness. And I'm very pleased that you shared with us the principles that you hold dear to your heart, because those are the ones that we really strive for as a Faculty of Health Sciences, and those were instilled in us by our beloved Hoda Zreya for so many years as well. Since you asked to skip the softball questions, so I'm going to be a little bit straight with you. The principles that you have outlined require quite a bit of financial resources. And looking forward, especially in the next perhaps few years, about the financial challenges that we face as an institution that I'm sure we're going to overcome, is that those two, the commitments, the financial commitments based on the principles and the financial challenges that we have, that means that tough decisions have to be made, at least in the coming few years. So have you given some thought about how would you triangulate those tough decisions along with the principles that you outlined that would need considerable financial resources? Thank you.
So before you sit down, I suggest you meet Mr. Brow, because you're going to be an ad hoc development officer. You just made a very good point. And that point is that everyone has to make priorities. Not making a decision is a decision. If I basically had infinite wealth and distributed equal amounts to everyone, that's not a decision, okay? The decisions are going to be crystal clear with time, that we will focus on excellence, that we have some priorities that we absolutely need to undertake and to complete. One of them is already obvious. The board has spoken about the importance of updating and building our medical center to a current world-class center, because, let's be candid, the major renovations in the medical school, really meaningful ones, as Samir Atwi once told me when he picked me up from the airport, haven't really been done since my father was the dean here. And if some of you think that I'm coming here to finish my father's work, you're sadly mistaken. I think it's being finished by people far more capable than me. So here are some priorities for me. For me, the priorities are to support excellence in research and to ensure the best possible education for the very best students in the region and in the world. And by doing that, to become more competitive for students that now have choices, both here and elsewhere. And that's going to require some changes. Changes in how we recruit students, changes in how we recruit faculty, changes in how we hold people accountable, changes in things that we will arrive at by consensus, by debate, by discussion, by dialogue. And yes, some of that will hurt. So the steps are going to be really, for me, a several-month period after we arrive in late August, of learning from the deans, from the VPs, from the administration, and especially from the faculty and students. What can we realistically make great or greater? And what do we not have the resources for at this time, but is an aspirational goal for us not to forget? And I've gotten comfortable with those decisions, and I'll give you an example, although I hate to teach by anecdote. So for me, as someone who is an openly acknowledged liberal, our hospital at Grady, which is the public hospital at Emory, is near and dear to my heart. And early on, we faced a crisis in how we would staff it faculty-wise. What would we do about our sickle cell patients? How are we going to partner the School of Public Health and others to try to make an impact for the least fortunate of our constituents? And I can tell you it involved taking painful cuts at other parts of our enterprise. So not making a choice, Dr. Shadi, is a choice. Better that you make the choice, and if you're wrong, to correct it, than to stand by and let the rest of the elements make that choice for you. And my choices will be clear, because they're not going to be my choices. They'll be our choices.
Thank you. Now, yes, Imad.
Yes, thank you. Imad Baalbaki, Development. In a few months' time, AUB will be celebrating its 150th anniversary. So this university has been through a lot, the thick and thin, as they say, and has survived. You mentioned that AUB is a world university, and world university it is. What are the components that you think we have currently, and the components that we should augment, the components we should acquire to assert AUB as a world university?
So thank you for that great question. It is indeed AUB's upcoming sesquicentennial. It will be a unique point for us to celebrate 150 years of scholarship as a platform to prepare ourselves for 150 more years of scholarship and teaching and service. One of the ways we intend to celebrate this is to select representative faculty members whose scholarship we need to highlight to make the case that does not need to be made to any of you or to our trustees, that this is a superb, vibrant hub for scholarship and teaching that really projects out into the world in so many positive ways, and that its durability is well beyond what any of us can anticipate. To do that, we have to be good stewards, but we also have to inventory, learn, and report out what we have here and what we need here. So that's my plan for how to make this a world university. But in addition, we have among the most distinguished groups of alumni in the world. We have scholar after scholar, business pioneer after business pioneer, intellectual teacher after intellectual teacher, healer, engineer, you name it. And we need to connect with these people. The alumni, like the faculty, love the university. But as only the latest alumni to be elected to the Board of Trustees, albeit a relatively short-serving alumni, I have to say that the alumni's needs, desires, wishes, and goals for connection are not exactly what we presume them to be. The alumni in the US have a very different perception of how they can help AUB, how they can serve AUB, and what they need from AUB. Then the folks in the region, and even in the region, they differ. So it's very important to strengthen those connections, not just for us, not for philanthropy only, but we live in a society where employment for young people is among the lowest it's been for 50 years, longer. Some of the statistics are absolutely depressing. They suggest that young people leaving college have worse employment opportunities than anyone since the Great Depression. America is better than other countries, but people are leaving and working multiple part-time jobs because the new jobs aren't out there. And we have these phenomenal resource of alumni who are smart and connected and powerful. And we have this incredible faculty and these wonderfully gifted students. We need to strengthen the connections and improve networking. I know for some pure intellectuals that word networking is a four-letter word, but we have to strengthen networking to help our students make the impact that they are destined to make in this world.
There's a gentleman back there. You've got to step forward. Who are you? In the third row back there. I guess no longer. So, yes, you will be next. He didn't want to take his chance. Yes, you. They're going to bring you a microphone. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Hi, Rosemary Bustani, Faculty of Medicine. I am a third-generation AUBite and very proud of it, and I think it's a fantastic university. But we are also a university that's an American university, but I don't think is better than a lot of American universities. I raise this issue because recently, or the past few years, I've been involved in trying to assist in recruiting individuals to, and you know how difficult it is to recruit to this part of the world. And granted, though a cut in pay is something to be expected when one moves from the US to Lebanon, but demotion is something that I find very difficult. And I've seen it happen on more than one occasion where someone who is an associate professor at the University of Arkansas has to come here as an assistant professor because the rigid guidelines of AUB are not met. What are your thoughts on the matter?
So Rosie, even I am not so foolish as to get into matters of promotion. Let me use a term that the engineers like, which is impedance match, okay? I think quite candidly, I was chosen by the board because I was felt to be the best impedance match at this time. And that is true for every faculty member who comes here. They are reviewed and pushed forward, put forth by their department chairs, their deans, and the administration, and their qualifications have to be such that they are seen to clearly add excellence to an institution. I don't believe in demotion, and I would never go somewhere where I was dropped from professor to associate professor. And I think, in principle, I cannot advise any faculty member to do that unless they're going from a community college to a research university. Then all bets are off. I think we can agree. But if you're going like from research university to research university, then you should aspire to at least keep your rank and perhaps be promoted. Every case is different, and I'm not rendering an opinion on this case, but I want to go back to something I said earlier. We need to be highly selective, but we need to be open-minded in recognizing excellence, be it in scholarship, teaching, service.
Yes, please, right there, and then right there. We can do two next to each other. Thank you.
Dr. Khoury, Nada Sharara, Office of Development. You were talking about the challenges and you kind of thinking of what kind of challenging questions we have. When you first took this, you're going to be the president of AUB, what was the first thing that came to your mind that is going to be a big challenge, knowing in this part of the world it could be a totally different ball game? Different rules, different culture, different politics. And then what do you require from us as a team sitting here to do in order to help moving forward? Thank you.
So I should be very candid and say that the challenges were not the first thing that came to mind when Philip essentially told me that the board had voted to confirm me or elect me. We'll use whatever word you want. And I want to be clear that while a sense of duty and honor led me to consider and apply and want for this position, my first sentiment in being elected president was joy. And when I look at the challenges, I embrace these challenges. And if you want me to tell you which one came to mind first, it was not just resources for a greater education to more people, or for more research funds, or for more recruitment, or for better buildings. But my first challenge, which I put on myself and I put on all of you, is to be the best possible role models for the best and the brightest people that are coming here. I think if we accomplish that, which is much harder to do, and I fail at multiple times a day, and I've got a witness who can tell you how often I fail at, and others, I want to let you know that if we can accomplish that, if we can be great role models in our discourse, in our commitment, in our thoughtful approach to the real challenges of the region, which I don't minimize in any way. You know, stability in the Middle East is a relative term. I understand that. And stability in academia is also a relative term. I think everyone in this room understands the convulsions that are plaguing higher education, and they may be healthy convulsions, discussions of tenure, of rank, of promotion, of the very missions of the universities, and their long-term goals and their viability are alive and well today. But I really think the best path forward is to have an honest dialogue about what we can do best, to do it to the best of our abilities, and to remember that every day, for every mathematician, historian, engineer, public health leader, every leader in agriculture, everyone here, that there's a younger person watching your behavior, and they are role modeling you, consciously or subconsciously. They're seeing how you treat the person next to you. Do you brush them off for someone who's more important or more powerful or may advance your career? That's the biggest challenge. If in 10 years we're all better role models, then that old folks' home will look really good to me.
Hi, I'm Nada Sbeiti, also Office of Development / Advancement. Advancement. Yeah. She's my boss. She's
better than the Office
She's
of
telling me
Rearguard,
advancement,
actually.
not development. So you wanted something that's not easy, and here's my question to you. So I'm an AUB staff, And as you know, most the morale of AUB staff and probably many of the faculty is not as its best nowadays. We have so many newspapers writing things about us, and friends keep asking about, what's going on. And you cannot keep on saying, no, we're great, we're doing excellent, because things get to you, and you feel that, yes, we're not at our best. And it's true, AUB, at least, we can do better. And we know that you see things sometimes and you ignore them, because if you mention it, nothing's going to be done. And so this is my question to you. We have all these things and all these dreams of where we want to go. And yet every research, every student needs services to go with it. And so you need to have good computer systems, so when you ask for a statement, it's correct. You need to have immediate financial aid when students apply to AUB. And all these are major issues that are not just, yes, we want to do this. These are issues that have to do with day-to-day lives. And so how are you going to address this?
So those are two separate questions, because you broke it down into a morale and resources. Let's talk about resources. I came here with an agreement from the board for a $2.5 billion startup package. Is that right? No. Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. So resources, we are going to have to get down and earn those resources, okay? And we better be prepared to give the truth in the most positive manner possible. Not alter truth, but to reflect on what is great about this institution, why it's unique, and why we can move forward. That's not just for development or financial aid, that's for everyone. But morale is not easy. And I understand, more than I would like to discuss today, why morale is not everything it should be here. There are some parts that are beyond our ability to fix, which is some of the regional turbulence. There are financial challenges. There are facilities that need upgrading, to be modest. And there is always the pervasive sense with academics, because they think hard, everyone, faculty and staff, that the boy or girl next door is getting a better slice of the pie and a bigger slice of the pie than I'm getting. Let's be honest and admit it. As academicians, it's almost second nature. He got my pie, she got my pie. That's part of our challenge here, is to understand that there are some things we absolutely have to fix. We have to agree on how to care for each other as we get older. We have to eventually agree on benefits, on contracts, on all the nitty-gritty. In all my career, the devil has been in the details. And after September, I will be in the details to the degree that it's correct in my mind, because we need to agree on some fundamental things here that have stalled, that are not yet resolved. Even with all the goodwill in the world, at some point, you come to a decision when everyone gets what they absolutely need, even if that means that not everyone gets what they want. And getting there is not going to be easy, but every day we fail to agree on the key issues. Contracts, priorities, teaching loads, job descriptions, recruitment priorities. Every day is a day lost. Life is precious. As an oncologist, I have a different perspective on just how precious life is, because every day is unpredictable. I can see Dr. El-Saghir nodding because he understands. Sometimes our patients don't live very long. Since every day is precious, I don't want to waste a lot of time in it. When we come in, we will work with folks, the deans, the executive leadership, to understand the issues, and I will meet with all of you with the students, with the staff, with all the constituencies, and try to get our arms around what we absolutely have to do first. And I don't have a more detailed answer for you, I'm afraid, today.
Fadlo, I want to thank you for coming, showing up, Lamia coming together here. I want to thank the faculty and staff for finding the time to be here and to pose the kinds of questions you've done in such an elegant way, really. And we're delighted you're here. Thank you. So there is a reception outside. Please come and meet Fadlo, Lamia, meet yourselves. Enjoy for a few moments at least. Thank you, everyone.